So today we celebrate the feast day of St. John, the Apostle, the Evangelist. In the Eastern Church, I've been told he's called St. John the Theologian. And we hear in the first reading today what was from the beginning, what we have heard, what we have seen with our eyes, what we have looked upon and touched with our hands concerns the word of life. Wait a second. The word of life? How can you touch that with your hands and see? Well, because, as we know, the word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. On this feast of St. John, we can reflect on so many parts of his life, which we hear from the Gospels, whether it was his calling at the Sea of Galilee or another calling, that story we hear when he had been a disciple of John the Baptist, and then he's with Andrew, and John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God, behold him who takes away the sins of the world," and he follows after, and Jesus turns and says, "Why are you following me?" Basically, what are you looking for? "Master, where are you staying? Come and become one who sees." And they follow him, and they're with him that day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so many different things throughout the Gospels that we hear. We know, of course, he was the only one of the apostles to be at the foot of the cross with Mary and Mary Magdalene. And we also know that at the Last Supper, he rested his head on the heart of Jesus. I think that's why I'm wearing my Sacred Heart vestment today, even though it's not First Friday. But we know that the Sacred Heart was revealed in a special way through St. John, the Apostle. We hear about in the 1200s and the 1600s how Jesus appeared to St. Gertrude and St. Margaret Mary, respectively. And with St. Gertrude, they both of those revelations of the Sacred Heart happened on the feast of St. John, the Apostle. And with St. Gertrude, so here we are a couple days after Christmas. John appears to her along with Jesus and his Sacred Heart, and she and John rest their heads on the heart of Jesus, and there's so much of this love that is beating out forth. And she says to John, did you experience this at the Last Supper? He said, "Yes." "Well, why didn't you write about it?" And he says, "Well, I was focused on speaking about the Word made flesh. But there will come a time when the world needs to hear about the incredible, overwhelming love of God that comes from the Sacred Heart." And, of course, then 400 years later with St. Margaret Mary, that's the revelation that came not just to the religious, but to the whole world. And we experience this heart as a merciful heart of Jesus especially through St. Faustina and that diary. But we look to St. John, and what gave him that strength to be at the foot of the cross? The only thing I can think of is the fact that he rested his head on the heart of Jesus. That our relationship with Jesus, the intimacy that we have with Jesus, gives us the strength, the love that we need for the rest of our lives. And so often we spend time saying our prayers. The Lord is inviting us in a special way today, not just to say our prayers, but to enter into an intimacy with the Lord. And maybe it means that we don't say the prayers we're supposed to, quote unquote, today as such, as much as just spending time with the heart of Jesus. You know, when we come to receive the Eucharist, whenever we have a Eucharistic miracle where the Eucharist turns into flesh, when they do the tests on it, the type of flesh it is heart muscle. That we can see the Sacred Heart of Jesus coming and filling us when we come and receive the Eucharist. And as John had that experience of that intimacy with the love of God, he wants us also to spend time in intimacy with the Lord. So maybe after communion today, as we're making our thanksgiving and the time of silence, we can just maybe rest our heads on the heart of Jesus with St. John and St. Margaret Mary and St. Gertrude, and hear with our ears the beating of the heart of Jesus With every beat of his heart, he says, I love you, I love you, I love you. That he loves us despite our sinfulness. That he loves us despite our weaknesses. He loves us despite our failures. He says, I love you. Come to me. Come to my heart and rest. Do not be afraid.